Welcome back into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I'm here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We were talking off the air before we started that an interesting thing for an interesting thought exercise would be, what were the 5 most influential books that you read on doing therapy?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it really made me think.
we think it would be interesting to other people because it's interesting to us.
Well,
what does that say about us?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, but whether it's interesting, I mean, I guess if there were people who were listening or watching who were either therapists themselves or training to be therapists, it might be interesting.
Well, that's our
to them.
hope, that people
Yeah.
in those categories will be listening to
Yeah.
these conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
But for other people, yes, it would
Yeah.
probably be like watching paint dry.
Yeah, exactly.
So last week we were talking about narcissism, and that ended up being, I thought, like a really, really great discussion. We did that for 20 minutes, and it felt like 3. I think we could have done an hour on it, but at the end of that, we were talking about how you would apply these ideas of working through narcissism to therapy.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, this idea of, we were talking about the safe holding environment. We were talking about, that you can lie to yourself or you can lie to your therapist, but you really can't lie to yourself. And that really had me thinking about this week's presentation on resistance. And I don't know how you feel about it. I can sometimes find myself getting frustrated, even though I know I should not get frustrated, because clients are resistant, because it is the foundation of the therapeutic relationship. But I sometimes find myself getting frustrated with people.
Absolutely. As well you should. But you have to remember where to stand. I mean, it's like, Archimedes in the fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
You are there for a reason, and that reason is to understand them and hold that space together for them so that they can nibble at success, whatever that involves. I remember a patient that I had. I saw this gentleman for a couple of years, and the other therapists in the office would be aware when he was there and would often comment to me, how can you stand to be in a room with this person? Because what they observed about this person is that this person had this very loud, hail fellow, well-meant, met artificial laugh that he used really inappropriately as a verbal punctuation all the time. And they're like, don't you want to strangle him when he does that? And I never felt that way when I was in the room with him, because I could see that he was more than that, and I could see that that was a device to protect him. It was a resistance. And if I understand that, then I don't get irritated about it.
Yeah.
If I don't understand that that's what's going on, then it really bothers me.
And a lot of people do that. A lot of people use laughter inappropriately to mask
Which is a good defense
things that are
mechanism.
going on. Right. Yeah. That never frustrates me. And I love being able to say to a client, hey, do you know that you laugh to cover up other feelings?
Yeah.
And I've never had anybody say, oh, no, I didn't know that. They always say, I kind of knew. So I found
but
that.
I think the further clinical message is, do you understand that laugh irritates other people and causes problems that are patterns in your life about problems with people?
Yes.
And that's the conversation that you want to get to. I mean, it's not that big a hill to climb to say, you're just doing this. You just blinked. You just did that. The question is, that becomes relevant, at least to me, is, do you know that when you do this, you put up a barrier between you and the other person that causes negative consequences for you?
Yeah.
And so that may be why you lost your job. That may be why you lost your wife. That may be, whatever that's pained you and brought you to this place. So could we discuss that? Could we discuss that possibility?
For me, the frustration, if I feel it, comes from wanting them to get to a place where I believe that they, and obviously it's not my job to decide where they need to be.
Right.
But
well, they won't go there.
Yeah. Well, and I think about it. I tend to be very revolutionary, not in a, hey, let's go buy a gun and fight the government kind of way, but in revealing things to clients which some people don't believe in. You're not supposed to, tell them the answers.
You're supposed to be able to see the elephant in the room and say, hey, there's an elephant in the room, and this is what I see.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
But some people think, well, you gently guide them until they say, oh, there's an elephant in the room.
Those people aren't good therapists.
Well, whether they are or not,
no, they're not.
I'm not going to judge, but that isn't how I work. I will say to people, hey, this is what I think,
right.
And they'll say, and most of the time, 95% of the time, people will say, oh, okay, yeah, I see that. And then 5% of the time you get, oh no, that's absolutely wrong. And what I take from that is not that my understanding of the dynamic is inaccurate, but that they're not ready to hear it. So that I'm totally fine with. But if I've been working with a client for a long time, and especially if there's just, like, I'm just thinking about one particular client right now where we've been working for a long time, and there's just this one area of this individual's life where they just can't get motivated. And, we go over that information over and over and over again, and we've talked about it, and there's even been a revelation that, yes, this is absolutely what I need to do to be able to move to the next level. And then they just can't do it.
Okay, so I would say they won't. I would want to change the language. Mm-hmm. There's a resistance that they're using to avoid doing it. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a can't. And that's part of where I want to go in therapy with somebody is to change the language that they feel or hear in their head. Because when you say, I can't do it, then I'm a victim. Mm-hmm. Life happens to me. If I say to them, you won't do it, then let's talk about why you won't do it.
Right.
Are you afraid of the outcomes? Are you afraid of the impact on somebody else? Are you afraid it'll cost you more than you can afford? Whatever it might be, what's blocking you from making a move that you are at least telling me you want to make, that you wish you could make, mm-hmm. or that that you, quote, should make? So who are you lying to, you or me?
Well, and we've even had with this one particular person that I'm thinking of, we've even had that discussion, and we've identified what the mm-hmm. benefit is. And still, it's been difficult. So,
but maybe then therapeutically, it would help them if you could help them change the language they use to frame because words matter. Mm-hmm. The words you hear in your head make a difference. And if you and this person are both using the word won't or can't, then that's powerful. Mm-hmm. But if it's won't as opposed to can't, if it's won't, then you have to.
We never use the word won't. I think what I usually would say would be have not yet been able to.
Okay. So that implies that there is the possibility that you will be able to. So let's find the door that opens that allows you that choice.
Right.
So again, we get to the same place.
Yeah. And the truth is that again, it's not on my time frame. Right. And that's what I think that what is frustrating for me, and so the transference for me, or the countertransference for me, which is the client's or the therapist's perception of the client, the relationship with the client. So transference is the client's perception of the relationship with the therapist.
Right.
Countertransference is the therapist's perception of the relationship with the client. The countertransference for me is I want all of my people to be successful. Like, one of the things that I say to people when they come to see me is, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but when people come and see me, they change. Because if you don't change, you stop coming to see me, because it's just you can't hang in that space and refuse to change. You'll become very angry with me, mm-hmm. and you'll leave, which is okay with me. Like I said before, you can't ever be afraid to lose a client. And right. I tell people and I get it. That's not everybody's cup of tea, and I'm fine with that. There are lots of people who will rub your back and hold your hand and tell you it's okay forever.
Well, and people heal in stages, so that may be what they need for now.
Sure.
Then they can come back to you a couple years later and get slapped around. Emotionally, of course.
Well, and I think that I can try and be emotionally soothing.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna say let's have a pity party for.
You can do the soothing for a while to stabilize the atmosphere of the relationship, but at some point you have to push against the resistance.
And so then when I see what the potential is of a particular client, and I just get this sense, okay, this could be really transformative. and then it takes a long time to get there. So my countertransference is I can see what that potential is, and I think it's very parental, and I want that. But the truth is sometimes people and sometimes kids don't want to go there, and you just have to accept that that's just not going to happen,
or they don't
not going to
feel
happen
like
in
they
your
have the
time frame.
freedom or the
Yeah.
power to go there.
Yeah.
I would go there, but my parents won't let me. Because I can't announce to the world that I'm gay. I can sit in this room and talk to you that I think I might be gay, but I can't go home and tell my parents that or that I'm pregnant, because my father would never speak to me again, or it would cost me my relationship, or I'm not ready to move out and live on my own, and all these fearsome things that they are afraid of that help them stay trapped in a situation. So part of good therapy, and you don't want them in an unhealthy way to savage anything or render relationships, but you want them to conceptualize that they have the freedom to make a choice later, or make a choice not now, and redefine the victim script. I'm not stuck in this place. I'm choosing to stay in this place until the other doors open that allow me to go somewhere else. So let's talk about when that happens. How will I recognize it, and where will I go? What will I make different in my life? So it's actually, and I think Yalom calls it leaning into the resistance.
Yeah.
And so if the resistance is, I can't do that because my circumstances don't allow for it, then we say, okay, we accept that. Let's talk about when your circumstances change and you can do it. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
How do you go from this place to the next place? And how will you recognize, the train's coming to a stop?
So do you subscribe to, when I was doing the show notes and I listed the 5 Freudian forms of resistance, do you feel like that is
I think it's a good,
accurate?
again, we have this conversation regularly. I think you have to have the conceptual framework. We have to have the common language to understand, as clinicians talking to one another, about what we think is going on. But I'm amazed at how much I am aware that I learn from my clients about the way people work, or about the way they work. The client that I was talking about with the hale and hearty laugh, one of the most moving moments in our therapy. One day he brought in, he was stuck in a triangular relationship, 2 other people, all of whom knew of each other, all of whom were putting maximum pressure on the other 2 to make a decision. Somebody get off the train. And I kept saying to this individual, you have the ability to make a decision. You can make the train stop or change. Oh, no, the other 2 people have the power. One of them will make a decision. I'll go whichever way the other one wants to go. One day that individual brought in a painting from their apartment and said, this is me. And the painting was the view from a mouse hole in a wall, and the mouse looking out into a room full of people who are living their lives. And my client said, that mouse is me. I'm in the mouse hole looking out at the people that are moving and living, and I'm afraid to come out and be there because I'll get hurt. And so we were able to talk about that and reframe the understanding of that and help him get to a place. I mean, that was a transitional moment where we moved to a place where the guy made a choice, which he'd resisted making for a couple of years because he wanted somebody else to make the choice. So you talk about resistance. That resistance was his fear of the responsibility of making the choice that he wanted to make, even to himself, admitting, I have a preference. But he'd built his life to be safe by saying, I can live with any preference. But he wasn't happy.
Yeah. And so do you think that the therapy was just creating enough safe holding environment and trust for him
to bring the picture in?
Yeah.
To bring me the way, the device by which we could both understand the message.
Yeah. So the therapy was creating the safe environment, giving him comfort and to feel the freedom to bring in the picture. And then once he brought in the picture, then he was able to find his way out of the mouse hole.
Yeah, he was able to say to himself and to me, this is how I see myself. He had not been able to ever face that honestly. I mean, he knew why he was stuck. And so then he was able to say, I don't want to be stuck anymore.
So, and I'll put a slide up for the 5 forms of regression. What do you think could you categorize that regression?
I never do. I mean, I don't try to put a label on it.
And I said regression, but I meant resistance.
Repression, right? No, I don't. I don't worry about those labels. I worry about being present in the moment so that I can understand when something significant happens. I don't care what I call it. I just want to focus on it and say, hey, I think I just saw this. Did I just see this? And how do you understand that? Or this is the way I'm understanding it. Can you tell me if I'm getting it right? Because it's really important to me that I hear you accurately. And that doesn't just mean the words you say, but how you're understanding it, how you feel it. So if I can communicate that to you, to me, that's the most relevant thing that I can do. And if I can sit in the corner as an intellectual and say, well, that's the third form of Freudian resistance, that's not helpful to me or to them.
Okay, and you and I have had this conversation before,
Right.
and I agree 100% with
but
that it's not helpful to them.
Yeah.
It is helpful for me. Like if I can't understand it, not that it would change my capacity to be in a room with another human being and do therapy, but it would gnaw at my psyche.
So it goes back to transference, countertransference.
Yeah.
My goal is to make sure I keep my stuff out of there. My stuff intellectual. I mean, I like the intellectual puzzles that you and I talk about, but I mean, they're fun games to play. And our understanding of the scripts of different fields of psychology, we spend a lot of time talking about that stuff. But when I go in the room with a client, I leave all that outside. I'm not spending any time consciously thinking about terminology, definition, sequencing. I'm going to do that away from the room. You know, I process the session and say, well, what do I think happened today? But when I'm in the room with that client, I don't do any of that. I just listen and attend and read their nonverbals, feel the atmosphere, and try to do enough reflective listening that we both feel like I'm getting it. Whatever they're sending, whatever they need me to get, that I'm getting it. And if I don't, I keep struggling with that until we both feel that.
So you would argue that it is not
In the
necessary
immediate moment,
or important. So it isn't necessary or it isn't important for the therapist to be able to understand the resistance.
no, that's not what I'm saying. Let me
Okay.
try to be more clear.
Okay.
What I'm arguing is that in the moment of the session,
Right.
I don't spend any energy or time trying to label it
Okay.
or put it in a bookshelf
Yeah.
somewhere. I may do that away from the session. I spend all my time trying to just be present and available and supportive and do reflective listening,
And I probably would
which I
say
think is
that.
what Kohut says. I mean, go
Yeah.
back to mirroring. We
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do it I don't think I would do it in session. Like if I couldn't label it in session, I don't think that would change me at all.
But we've both known therapists and we've known clinics where they have paperwork where, where they go through and check off, okay, that's the third form of resistance.
Yeah.
And then that tells us, oh, we got to look at the mother. You know, I just don't see that as being good therapy.
Right, now that I agree with, but I'm just saying for my own self.
It's like taking notes during the session.
Yeah.
I never would do that. Never did do that. Didn't need to.
Right.
Because I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
But after the session, I mean, you're required now by the Board of Ethics to make notes. And then we spend a lot of time teaching people in therapy classes how to take notes that don't entangle them or their clients with legal complications later. You know, like if a client comes in and says, I'm suicidal, and I put it in my notes that we discussed that you felt suicidal today, I always put that you said you were suicidal. I don't make the judgment clinically that I saw that you were suicidal, because that protects me later from lawsuits if should you kill yourself, that that I was practicing inappropriately or maliciously, malignantly, whatever. Because if you get called before a deposition, then the lawyers are going to say, how many books have you read about diagnosing suicidality? How many courses have you taken? Where did you take them? Who were the professors? What made them experts? Use your own experience, because who are you? You're nobody.
Right.
And the person died.
Right.
So it must be your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
for you in therapy,
right.
And I'm saying that for me, I really want to understand it. For you in therapy, what value to the client do you perceive resistance to take?
Resistance is the fence that they put up that tries to protect their core self from whatever fear or anxiety that they have.
Yes.
And there are strategies that we use to keep us away from that stuff. And that's what resistance is.
So I agree with that. That it is a way of being able, for me, it's a way of the individual being able to protect the integrity of the ego and the identity.
Yeah, it's a shell around the egg.
Yeah.
And our challenge is to take the shell off. I mean,
Right.
you've got to be, everybody wears masks. The more intimate the relationship, the fewer masks you need to keep on. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, therapy is about making the relationship appropriately intimate enough that you are safe with me seeing behind the mask, that you'll take it off and allow me to see more of you than you allow other people to see.
So this is maybe the real nut here is, let's assume that I'm good at my job, I do therapy with a client, and I crack that egg, maybe even break through it, maybe even remove it, and then the shell, and then what do you think the therapist's job or responsibility to the client is if I remove that resistance? Then, because they're only with me 1 hour a week at most, and maybe even 2 hours a month.
Right.
And so then, what is the therapist's responsibility to the client when they send them out into the world with this resistance?
That's a great question. As the time runs out, and you learn psychologically that you can tell when a therapy hour is coming to an end, you have to put them back together. You have to let them put the shell back on, because they have to go out in the world where they live.
So you would say you reconstruct the shell.
I don't do that, but I encourage them to do that. And I often say to them, I mean, to me, again, the words matter. I would not say I take the shell off. I invite them to take it off, and I'd say it's safe if you want to look inside that. So they take it off, which the message there being, you have the power to do this. I'm not attacking you or invading you or challenging your defenses. And when you're ready, you can put it back on, just like a coat. And so when you get ready to leave the room, you put your coat back on. So whatever turmoil that this memory or these experiences has generated, we want to put it back together so that you can go out and live in the world until you come back in here. And then we can take it off again if we want to.
What I usually will say to a client is, the stuff that we are talking about here isn't stuff that I really want you to talk about when you're out in the real world. I don't want you to act this way out in the real world.
You're not ready. You go out and sabotage it. And that's, again, a resistance, as we understand intellectually, is when they go out and sabotage. Basically, my therapist told me I need to get a divorce. Well, I've never said that to anybody that I'm aware of.
Right.
But they will say to me, well, I need to get a divorce. And I said, well, that's what you think. But later they want to say, well, their partner says, why are you doing this? Oh, my therapist told me it was time.
Sure. And then the partner calls you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
says, well, you know good so-and-so. Why did you tell my husband to get a divorce?
Aren't there laws against people like you practicing therapy?
Yeah. Well, there probably are, but not for that, because I don't think I ever said that.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So this was a really great discussion, and I hope that this was beneficial for people. Again, like the videos, subscribe to the videos. There is a Psych with Mike icon down in the bottom right-hand corner. Click that to subscribe. The music that appears in Psych with Mike, as always, is produced and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And for Brett and I, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.